Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Sports Business Classroom podcast. Special for a couple of reasons. Number one, Dave DuFour, Larry Coon. That's special. Number two, registration for the Immersive Experience at Las Vegas Summer League is now open. July 9th to 15th. Go to sportsbusinessclassroom.com and sign up.
You said it all. This is great. I mean, Sports Business Classroom, we're now in our 8th year. If you count the virtual year in 2020, we're in our 8th year of this. How many people have gone through this and gotten jobs in the league or around the league? It's just fantastic. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, I've run out of room on the notepad that I write everyone's name.
I know.
Every time they get a job, I jot the name down. I got to turn the page here soon. Also, Larry, we have a new CBA agreement in place, at least a temporary agreement, and we're working toward labor peace for another 7 years in the NBA.
Yeah, for me, like a cicada, every 7 years, I have to come out and redo all my work all over again.
Yeah, that's right.
And this is that year.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the Immersive Experience first, because that's part of the reason that this podcast exists. sportsbusinessclassroom.com. You can go sign up. Registration's fully open, but spots are running out quickly. Larry, let's talk a little bit about the experience. When you get to Vegas, right off the bat, we have the nice kickoff party with Steve Shenbaum. Talk a little bit about that and how that sets us up for the week.
Yeah, we start off kind of relaxed. We start on the afternoon of Sunday, opening reception. Hey, let's get to know each other. You know, there's about 100 students in the room with all of us, some of our guests. Some of them are very well-known guests from time to time. And, you know, we just sort of do the intros. I run down the program. And then what I need to do at that point is take these 100 people who are going to be with me for a week, and I need them to come together and coalesce quickly. I need them in the right frame of mind, the right mindset to get to work, but also knowing each other and relaxed with each other. And nobody does that better than Steve Shenbaum from Game On Nation. He's worked with #1 draft picks. He's worked with NBA teams. He's worked with teams in every league. He's worked with the U.S. military. He just does a fantastic job. And in 1 hour, you've seen it multiple times, he just brings everybody together. And by the time we're done with that opening session, all the students are ready to just hit the ground running on Monday morning. And one thing I always say is, if you're coming to SBC, you're investing a lot of money, you're investing a week of your time, and you're investing a lot of trust in me, in you, and all of the other instructors to make that experience worth it. And we're going to give it to you. We're going to bring it. So you're going to be working hard, and from Monday morning at 8 a.m. all the way through the whole day, you're probably scouting games or doing broadcast or media opportunities at the Summer League games at night. You're immersed in the Summer League. We are making you experience it. We are putting you to work. And by the time you get to the end of the day, Saturday, when we break up, you're exhausted in a great way, and you're ready to go off and do your thing. People over and over tell me that it's changed their lives. You know, I say this program changes lives, and it's a grandiose thing to say, except I've heard it enough times that I feel justified saying that.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who got my start in professional basketball doing broadcasting, literally I started at SBC. I was a student in 2016, and I've been back ever since. But whether it's scouting video and analytics, whether it's broadcasting, whether it's CBA or salary cap, when you do our immersive program, you're learning from people who have been in the league, who still work in the league, who work with the league like you do, but experts in their field. Seth Partnow literally wrote the book on basketball analytics. We gave it out to students last year. Mm-hmm. So sportsbusinessclassroom.com, go check it out. All the info's there. All right, moving on to why we're here. Labor peace. It's a big deal.
We do. That's the nice thing. There have been some down years as far as CBA negotiations have gone, right? 1999, down year. 2011, down year. But the last two agreements have been really good. And they've actually gotten both of the last two agreements done, including this one that they just settled on, well ahead of time. And, you know, they always do a 7-year agreement now with a 1-year opt-out. The 1-year opt-out isn't to test the water, see how things go. The 1 year, they intended to be a 6-year agreement, right? They intend to opt out of it. But having that deadline for opting out puts a solid deadline date in their heads, because No, people, when they negotiate, if you don't have a deadline, you're just going to keep going back and forth till the cows come home, right? You need a date to be working toward. And having that opt-out date gives them that solid point that they say, we have to have everything done. They extended it a couple of times, but then they still got it done at the date they said they were going to get it done. Now they just have to dot all the I's, cross the T's in order to have an actual agreement.
Yeah, and when you think about career cycles with the players, but also just turnover throughout the league and all of the changes that happen, lining it up as close as possible to the TV deals seems to me like the smart move.
I think that's huge. If you remember back to 2016 and 2017, it was flipped. It was the other way around. The TV deal hit in 2016 under the previous CBA, and then the new agreement was 2017. So they really couldn't negotiate those things into it before the TV deal hit. And I think that cost them, because they were kind of doing it under different pressures and for other reasons. But this year, they're more familiar with each other. It's actually a change in some of the leadership in both. So it's good from that perspective as well. But this year, it's the agreement first and then the TV deal hits. And I think they're much better prepared, and they're not going to have such a shock to the system like they had in the last one.
Yeah, and realistically, everyone has a better sense of what that TV deal is going to look like when they're entering into this agreement. So where are we right now? I mean, we're getting the media reports that they've come to an agreement. Everyone is singing Kumbaya, but where are we actually in the process?
Yeah, because I'm getting hit up. When are you going to have the FAQ done? We're a long ways off from that. So what we have right now is just a handshake deal, a deal in principle. They're still even finalizing the term sheet, which is the list of things that they agree to in this agreement. They're going to finish up that term sheet, have it out to teams probably by early next week as we record this. So second week of April. And at that point, the teams will know what's going to be in there. And the league and the union are going to get back to figuring out, okay, what is the actual CBA going to change like? Because you can come to an agreement on, okay, let's go back a couple of CBAs, right? You come to an agreement on, we're going to allow two-way players, and it's going to be 2 players per team, and here's the salary cap hit, and blah, blah, blah. But then there's 1,000 other details to work out about how CBA players impact the cap, impact restricted free agency, impact trades, benefits, everything. There's just a lot to work out, and all of that stuff goes into the agreement. So they go back, they revise the agreement, which will take a lot longer, and they have the luxury of time this time. It's not like 2011 where 2 weeks before Christmas and we're going to open the season on Christmas. We have a deal. Here they have some time to work it all out. So the CBA itself will be out before we get to free agency in June, but they'll take their time with it. They're not gonna be burning the candle on both ends from here on out. Yeah. Once that's out, then we have a new agreement. It'll take effect July 1st, and we have free agency.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the changes. What's not being changed in the new agreement? I think that's an easier place to start.
Yeah, so we don't know for sure, all right? Because as of this moment, I have not seen a term sheet. As far as I'm aware, term sheet's not even done. So what people are hearing, they're hearing sort of like word of mouth from some of the people who might have been in the room. And thanks to those people, we have some information. Thanks to Adrian Wojnarowski and Shams, thanks to Bobby Marks, people like that. They're reporting from people who are directly there. So we know some things about it.
Right. And one of the things, and I think that this is a big one, we all expected this to have changed in the last CBA, but it seems as if they're not going to touch the one and done. It seems like they are not going to change the draft eligibility age rule. Is that a bit of a surprise to you?
When you say we all, were you including me in that?
Yeah, we're all,
because I never
watch the games, so we have to deal with that. But yeah, I mean, it seems like that it's not going to change.
I never thought they did, because number one, they like it. Both the league and the union have reasons for liking it, right? The league, they get to see the player develop for longer and get him when he's more of a ready commodity, not risk the player being such a bust, growing more in physically, mentally, and in his basketball game. And also they get like more of a chance to see medicals, things like that. That they want to stay out of high school gyms too. They don't want to be scouting every high school in the country. The union, okay, think about the union. This is a collective of players who are in the league. It is not a collective of people who aren't in the league.
Right.
And even if they're going to be in the league at some point, right? The guy in high school has as much of a say in the union as I do. In fact, I might even have more.
Yeah.
So the union doesn't represent those people. They represent the people who are in the league today. And when you think about it, every new player that you let in means an existing player in the league somewhere loses his job, which means if you're fighting for that, you're fighting for the obsolescence of your own membership. So it's not a hill that the union's got to die on either. Philosophically, are they on the side of people being able to get in? Yeah. Are they going to fight for it? No.
Yeah. Well, and then there's another argument here from the NBA side. Given the way that they've used the G League Ignite and highlighted them on the NBA app, and even with Victor Wembanyama, who's going to be in the league, theoretically next season, broadcasting his games on the app, they are actually marketing players before they get in the league.
Right.
And it's working for them.
Yeah.
So I think that this is a situation where why would you rock the boat?
Yeah, and players do have opportunities to get paid a little bit, including NIL. So it's not as much of okay, you're like a starving artist for another year before you can start to make a little bit of money. Now you have that opportunity, and then you can join the league.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about some cap stuff. No hard cap that we know of so far, and this is something that I don't think anyone really actually wanted.
Now that I would have been surprised because the union has always considered that to be an absolute non-starter, no hard cap in any way, shape, or form. There is a little bit of a hard cap it's been there for a while when you happen to be over the apron and you spend like you're under the apron. Well, you can't go above the apron, but they did not put in an actual hard cap this year, and nobody expected it. And I don't think it was any negotiation point whatsoever.
And in spite of significant changes to the way that the tax works, no amnesty provision at all in the CBA.
Yeah, usually when they change the tax significantly, they put in an amnesty because these teams did their planning, budgeted, set their roster, signed contracts, long-term contracts in many cases, based on an economic platform that exists. And if they change that, then they give teams an out, typically. This has happened twice before. It last happened in 2011 when they significantly changed the tax. This year they did too. They made a change. Typically when they do that, they add an amnesty so that a team could at least get out of a player without tax consequences. And this time they just didn't do that. As far as we know, again.
Right. As of right now, this is
I'm going to say this qualifier, right?
Yeah.
I can say as far as we know 100 times, or I'll say it once, and it applies to everything I'm going to talk about.
There we go. And our restricted free agent match period, there were some conversations that might start early.
What I thought was one of the bigger mistakes of restricted free agency. Good, they moved you can assign a restricted free agent to an offer sheet into the July moratorium. But the match period started after the July moratorium. Well, what does that mean? Now, instead of giving the team 2 days to match, you're giving them 8 days to match if you sign them on July 1st. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't fix any problems that existed with restricted free agency. Now, if they make that match period start with just like if it was outside of the moratorium, when the offer sheet was signed, I would be all for that. So I'm hoping they make that change. I haven't heard anything about it yet. We'll see.
And that actually works against the players. Especially, restricted free agency, we've seen it get later and later for certain players. Yeah, even into August.
Here's what happens. It ties up money, so teams don't want to go after restricted free agents. They go after the unrestricted free agents first. They re-sign their own guys first. And then the restricted free agents are left picking up the scraps. But what happens between that? All the money gets dedicated to other players, restricted free agents. The money's all dried up by the time we get to them. So getting them advanced to that same free agency starting point as the other free agents, I thought would have been great. And one of the things they are doing, is shortening the match period to 1 day. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. I thought so if they do that coupled with the match period, I'm hoping, but so far we've not heard it.
That's right. And partial waivers. There's not going to be any sort of partial waivers.
We don't know that there's not. But this is one of the things on Larry's wish list. So when they did the 2011 agreement and the amnesty, right, they set up this partial waiver process where with waivers now, you pick up the entire, if you're going to claim a player on waivers, you pick up the entire contract. That's it, all or nothing. With amnesty, they came up with this partial waiver solution where you can bid up to a certain amount that you're going to pay, and the highest bidder gets the player, and that's what they pay. And the original team would pay the rest. It works out for the other team because otherwise they're paying it all in the current system. So a player can get waived who is a good player, just not worth the contract he's under. He's just overpaid relative to the kind of player he is today. So that happened in 2011. They salvaged it a little bit in the 2017 agreement and it was just kind of weird where they stuck it. And literally, I think that they just stuck it there because they did all this work on it and they just didn't want to throw it out. And this was with the medical clearance, right? Yeah. So they did they attached it to that in a weird way. Well, I want that to be just the waiver process, period. I think that would be a benefit to the league. I've certainly campaigned for it with people who are at the table. Yeah. So I'm hoping, I have my fingers crossed.
Your example where a player maybe just isn't worth the contract. I mean, I think about just contract disputes or just internal disputes. I mean, Jay Crowder this year was in Phoenix and didn't play until the trade deadline when he was traded.
Yeah.
But that might have been a situation where if there is this scenario where teams can bid and take some of the load off the Suns, maybe it's just easier and for everyone, player and team, to just say, hey, we have a mechanism in place. We can waive you, but the contract's still guaranteed. And it ostensibly becomes a buyout for the Suns, if they're able to waive them. So
it's the same for the Suns, except they're not paying as much as they would have paid with a regular waiver.
Remove some of the barriers for player movement.
There's no loser in this. I'm hoping they do that. I'm just hoping we haven't found out about this yet.
Just call them, Larry.
I do.
The designated player criteria. Seems like that's going
to... We haven't heard that changed. You know, it's always been a controversial thing. This is like the Supermax type of deals where it was really just a gut reaction to Kevin Durant going and signing in Golden State. But that was a confluence of many different events coming together.
Cap spike.
The cap spike, 2-3-1 series going the other way, everything. And I thought it was an overreaction. And the designated player rule hurt other teams, hurt the smaller market teams who couldn't afford to spend that much more and also put the kind of players around that kind of guy in order to win. So it really handcuffed them. And I haven't heard any changes to it, although I would hope that they would sort of tone it down a little bit.
Yeah. And were there any trade rule changes that you were hoping to hear about?
Well, again, we've heard some things, and we'll talk about them as we start to go through the rules that have changed, but I haven't heard anything specific about any major changes to trade rules.
Okay. And then for the changes that they are going to make, how do they phase those in? Is it just becomes July 1st and everything is just different, or is there a process there?
We don't know. There have been many rules where they take a couple of years to phase something in.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's get to your overall feeling. I mean, again, well,
let's talk about the stuff that did change first.
Okay, let's do it. What has changed? What's the most significant change that stands out to you?
Okay, so we do have the 7-year deal, the opt-out after 6 years. The basic 50-50 revenue split stayed in place. Now, the nice thing about that, the system, it shows that the system as it is working, right? Remember in 2011, the players were getting 57% of the revenue and the owner said, we can't live with this. We would rather stop play completely than live another year under this unsustainable system. Well, they negotiated it down to basically a 50-50 split. The players, of course, did not like that one bit because they're losing 7% of the whole pie, but the owners are saying this helps grow the pie. This helps make it so that there will still be a pie. And they got that. And what's happened since then with that 50-50 split, the league has thrived and the pie got huge. And the fact that they're keeping that basic 50-50 split, again, as far as we know, just shows that that system, while it was uncomfortable for the players to adjust to, works and both sides are happy with it. And the changes that they're trying to make are aligned with growing the pie rather than changing the split of the pie. So that's part of why the whole deal got done anyways. So those basic deal points, I thought, and how it was done and when it was done, I think say a lot about the agreement. They're going to have cap smoothing
built
into it. What took them so long? Back in 2016, the league proposed to the union, we would like to do cap smoothing, cap the amount that the cap can grow at a certain percentage. The players would not have lost a dime. In fact, it would have the money would have gone to every player in the league. And then as it worked out, it was a huge cap spike. It could only go to the free agents.
That's right.
Only.
That's the thing that I think gets lost, is that it only went to the 100 or so free agents that were available.
Timofey Moskov, Luol Deng.
And there is a salary floor. The teams have to spend money. Like they can't
have to
collude with each other to save the gunpowder for the next battle.
And if the 50-50 split says they earn this much and their contracts pay them this much, then this gap, the league cuts a check to the union and the union splits it up and sends it to all the players.
Yeah.
So by capping the cap at 10%, to be redundant there, they're guaranteeing with the big TV money boost coming in that that's going to happen again. The cap will only go up so much. Free agency only, they get their fair share, but the rest of the players get all the rest. So it's going to be much more sane.
And you don't create a system where you have a few players that, because they were lucky enough to hit during a cap spike, have these contracts that, what we just mentioned with the waiver, a bloated contract that's out of whack with the rest of the league.
Exactly. Yeah. And the league says they want it to not matter what year you happen to become a free agent. And I agree with that.
It's a good way to do it, and especially because the money still goes to the players. We mentioned no hard cap and how the union just was never going to go for that. The licensing and revenue being included in the basketball income.
Make the pie bigger.
That's huge.
Right? Yeah. So it's going to be $160 million in 23-24 is what's projected. So the team and league licensing revenue now gets baked into the agreement. Now, we don't know what percentage of that gets baked into what's called BRI, or basketball related income, because with some things it's a lower percentage, it's 50%, but it's still an extra source of revenue that's going to go into the pot for the players to share equally in. So that's great.
And that's a massive amount of money being added to the pot.
It
is not nothing. Let's talk about some of the specific tax changes. In particular, there's now a second apron for me to learn.
Well, first apron gets dirty, right?
That's
so you need a spare.
It is $17.5 million above the tax line. And once you get there, you start to be restricted as a team.
So here's the whole point. The logic behind this, the big picture, right? They don't want to say you can't. They want to use the carrot and stick analogy, right?
Yeah.
So if you spend more than they want you to spend, then they start applying the stick and they make it harder on you. Now, the first thing they did with that was the luxury tax. And then they made it a more punitive luxury tax. And the teams were still spending. They said, all right, we're going to start taking away exceptions, making system changes. Well, now the second apron says, all right, you can, if you're going to spend to this apron and do that, you're still going to go north of that, Golden State, Clippers, then we're going to really get out the bigger stick. And at that point, it's going to be more punitive system changes. No trades where you can take on new money. You're going to lose the ability to trade. They said the draft pick in the 7th year. I don't know if that just means it's the 6-year rule for those players. You're not going to get a mid-level at all. It's not going to be a hard cap. You're still going to be able to sign minimums. You're going to still have bird rights in some respect, but they're just going to make it more onerous on you.
And so let's run through some of the changes. No mid-level exception, which you talked about. 100% limit in trades and no sending cash in trades, which has been, for the haves in the NBA, the good teams that are already in the tax, sending cash. And that has been a big tool for them, especially when it comes to like picking up second round draft picks and things of that nature. So that's tough to fill out your roster.
Well, then the other thing I heard is that we have the whole buyout market around March 1st, right? When player contracts become guaranteed. So a couple of days before that, teams waive players that are a non-guaranteed contract, and then it's open market for other teams who want to stock up. Well, apparently the people above the second apron aren't going to be able to take advantage of that market either. One thing that worries me about this is, and I'm not the first person who's mentioned this, teams are going to be incentivized this summer to sign players to get to, if you're the Clippers, you sign guys to super high salaries because then you can be trading down, you just have more flexibility. So there's an old rule called base year compensation. And again, it's a rule that had existed and then they kind of changed this form and toned it down. It still exists. It's only in restricted free agency in certain circumstances. But I think it's time to bring that rule back where you can't tailor a signing for cap purposes or for
you're thinking
purposes.
Like a declining contract or
just a more valuable contract than somebody's worth, right? So they always want contracts to be signed based on basketball value, not based on strategic value in trade, right? Or relative to the cap. So base year compensation says if a guy gets a huge raise, okay, fine, you can give him the raise. You can't trade him like he has that kind of salary. So I think that probably should, and I have no indication that it has, but I think something like that should come back again just to keep teams from leveraging the rules to their advantage in ways that the league did not intend.
Okay, and the tax brackets are tied to the salary cap.
Which is a no-brainer in some respects because they've fixed a lot that was wrong with the way all these brackets and indexes worked, right? The rookie scale salary, the minimum salaries, all the exceptions, the maximums, they all grow and shrink as the cap grows and shrinks. But those $5 million brackets, which were big brackets, back 15 years ago when, now 5 million is nothing.
Right.
So now they're going to have those tax brackets grow with the cap as well. So as we start talking about a larger scale of money, we talk about a larger scale of tax brackets. It just makes perfect sense.
And the regular old run-of-the-mill taxpayers, the good teams that are trying to make a push, seems like this is going to be less punitive for those guys.
It sounds like it. It sounds like they're going to try to make it less punitive for the people who barely eke over the cap. Again, there were old rules. I don't know if they're going to reemploy them. There was something in the original tax that was called the cliff provision, where you don't. The problem is if you're $1 over the tax, okay, you're paying $1.50 in tax. Big deal. But you just gave up $3 million or whatever it is coming from the league, from the tax proceeds that they collected from all the tax-paying teams. You forfeit that completely if you're $1 over the tax. So it's huge, that $1. Well, there used to be a thing called the cliff provision, and it was there for a different reason. But I think it's time to bring that back, where if you go over a little, maybe you get a little bit less revenue, and the farther you go up, the more that tax revenue that you receive goes down until you get to a certain point where it's zero. That to me makes perfect sense. I don't know that they're going to do that, but that's Larry's wish list for how this should change.
Let's talk about some of the exception changes. These are huge team building tools, and I'm calling this the Austin Reeves provision.
Yeah, because
the second round pick exception.
The Lakers got it wrong with Jordan Clarkson. They got it wrong with Talen Horton-Tucker. And now they're in that situation again with Austin Reeves. How many times can the Lakers mess up before they're going to pass a rule to help just the Lakers?
And now they've done it. It's a simple fix. Is this the end of the Gilbert Arenas provision?
I hope so. I really do, because that was you know what I say, like a Rube Goldberg device, and a hugely complicated device to fix a really simple problem, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's what the Gilbert Arenas provision was, right? The problem is if you have a guy who's a free agent after his second year, you don't have full bird rights. You can only sign him for a certain amount, and other teams, if they have the cap room, can sign them for more than you can sign them for. And if they're restricted, it doesn't matter. They put out an offer sheet, you can't match it. So the Gilbert Arenas provision just messed with the offer sheets, messed with the salaries, messed with the trade values, created these poison pill provisions that people used. It was really hard to understand. It was a mess in practice, when instead, why don't you just make it so you can sign these guys for 3 years?
It rewards the teams for doing the work involved in finding good players throughout the draft. So it actually adds value to the draft process. To me, this just makes sense.
It makes complete sense. So yeah, be able to sign. Now, we don't know how they're going to implement this, but they're going to at least be able to sign a second round pick for 3 years, I'm sure. Perfect.
It sounds good. Mid-level exception going up by 7.5%. That just makes sense.
They're giving teams more rooms, and then the room exception, that one you get if you dump all your salary and you get big free agent money, then you get back up to the cap. That one's going to increase by 30%. So again, we're giving teams that are in that around the cap up to around the first apron, we're giving them more flexibility to operate. Makes complete sense.
Now, this is an actual super interesting one to me. A 5-year rookie extension is now allowed if it's less than a max.
Again, right?
Same tools as any other player.
So the logic when they did this designated player, okay, if you're going to offer a max, then you can go even at a 5th year if it's that kind of player. Well, there have been plenty of players who they wanted to lock up longer term, even though they weren't at that max level of player. So this gives them the flexibility to
and
do
this
that.
is the Ben Simmons rule. The 2-player limit on designated players on the roster has been removed. So Ben Simmons could have been traded for Bam Adebayo or whoever else they wanted to trade him for. I mean, this is, again, it's so many of these problems are actually fresh in our memories from the last year or two.
Right. Well, again, you negotiate a CBA, that's one thing. You live with it for 6 years, you start noticing all the flaws.
Yeah, the warts show up.
Exactly.
And then 120% limit on the veterans extensions has been bumped up to 140%, which is
a step in the right direction. And again, here's my philosophy. You're in June, right? You still have the guy under contract, but he's going to become a free agent after July 1st. And if you can sign him to an extension, but there's a limit to the amount that you can sign him for. And if the player's worth more than that, you have no choice but let him become a free agent and try to re-sign him then. Well, at that point, every team's trying to sign him. The free agency market is less certain because nobody knows, is this guy on the market? Will he sign somewhere else or not? It just confuses everything around the league. Okay, if you like that confusion because of the hype market, that's one thing. But if you want some sanity in this process, you don't want the guy to become a free agent. If you're the team, you don't want him to become a flight risk. You don't want to be even hitting the market. So my thing is, I always wanted a player to be able to sign the same deal in June as they could sign in July, if it's their free agent. So why not? Okay, so they didn't bump it up to whatever you could sign the guy on July 1st, but they at least bumped it up to 140%. It'll help in some cases, but again, we have players that may be worth more than that they still have to become free agents.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about restricted free agency before. We talked about reducing the match period to 24 hours, but also qualifying offers are going up 10%. Do you feel like we're going to see maybe more guys take that qualifying offer route? Because to me, I don't see the qualifying offer as for players who are going to get paid. Qualifying offers seems just like a bad deal.
It's an escape route,
yeah,
and it's all it is, right? Mm-hmm. So the qualifying offer is in order to have a right, in this case, the right of first refusal to keep a restricted free agent, you got to offer the player something, and that is the qualifying offer. We offer you a 1-year contract at this calculated salary in order to retain the rights of free agency. Now, the player can go negotiate a deal with another team, but then the team can match, which means if he wants out of there, he's not going to go go sign a 5-year offer sheet somewhere else. 4-year offer sheet, because now he's here for 4 years.
Out, exactly.
So what do? You sign that 1-year deal at a much lower salary than you're worth in order to stay. And then the next year you're unrestricted and you can beat your path out of town. Yeah. Well, this at least gives the player a little bit more money there. Maybe it makes it better, but again, it's always, do you commit for 1 year at a lower salary? Is that worth it to you? And does the amount of that salary really change the calculus for you?
Yep. They're adding a third two-way contract. So I think two-ways has been a tremendous team building tool, roster development tool. We've found a lot of good players in the NBA coming out of the two-ways. They're now adding a third spot. And my biggest concern there is that so many teams don't use their last roster spot or two, but they will have two-way contracts where it's not a real NBA contract. They're actually saving money on this deal.
They're saving money. Agents, if agents of these kinds of players, of the guys who are like the 14th and 15th on the roster don't like it, again, we'll see how they implement this. It could be an easy fix. You get one two-way if you have, let's say, 13 on your roster. You get two two-ways if you have 14. You get 3 two-ways if you have 15. Boom.
Because this should be a job building tool. This should be creating 30 new jobs in the league.
You should not do this in lieu of having regular guys on the roster.
This should be extra jobs made for the league. All right. And then, this has been a hot topic all season long, and it gets worse every single year, but load management has been addressed, kind of. It's been addressed through the postseason award eligibility, and I've got a lot of problems with that. Number one, 65 games. I think that it's kind of an arbitrary number.
Well, they say there's going to be exceptions built around this, so we'll see what they come up with. Again, it might just be another horrendously complicated system. Who knows? But I think the premise is bad.
I do too. I think look, all NBA and awards tell the story of the season. Mm-hmm. I think one of the bigger, and I don't see this, in what we've heard so far, removing the awards from contract incentives to me makes sense, because then everyone can go back to the awards being an ancillary thing. It's an honor. It doesn't affect how much you get paid.
What the heck is the CBA doing talking about some of these things about the postseason awards to begin with? It used to be they just didn't care. It was trivia as far as the agreement was concerned.
Sign of the times, Larry. Sign of the times. Everybody wants a pat on the back. But I mean, look, you run into a situation where if you go and look, last season, I think that, just the cutoff at 65 games, there are guys who are all NBA. I think Steph Curry didn't play enough to make that. And can't tell the story of last season without Steph Curry, of the title-winning Warriors. What if he doesn't make All-NBA?
Yeah, and congratulations, you had the 7th best guard.
Instead of the best. So I think that they're going to be, I'm hoping this isn't set in stone. I hope there's a way to rework it as it is noted to be clunky, because I do think it will be clunky.
Well, let's go back and talk about the premise, because this is why I think it's a really bad rule, which is, what problem are you trying to fix and why is that a problem, right? Okay, so you're trying to fix players sitting out. Well, players aren't lazy. They're not going, I don't think I'm going to show up to work today. I'm going to call in and take a sick day. They want to play, right? Load management is a science. Load management is controlled by people other than the players, right? It's dictated. They tell them when they're going to play and when they're not going to play. So and load management's important, right? Players, people say that they're coddled, they fly private, they're not, right? The training and everything else around that they get put through, the conditioning, they're the best conditioned athletes in the world. And if you think it's easy to become one of the best conditioned athletes in the world and then have to play an 82 game schedule over 8 months, you're insane, right?
It seems to me like the way the fix for this isn't setting an arbitrary number of games you need to play. It's either tying your salary to the games played. So if you don't play that game, you don't get paid unless you're, injured, and that's between you and the team. But it seems to me like it's a scheduling issue. And if we can make it so that these guys didn't have to play more than 3 games a week, adequate rest, try to figure out a way to cut down on travel, which I think the NBA the last few years have done a really good job of.
But that is where you address load management.
Exactly. Having it in the CBA is just, it's a little bit weird.
Yeah. And you know what? If you're LeBron and you're playing, okay, they don't do 3 and 4 and 5 anymore, but you're on the tail end of a road trip where you've been out for 3 weeks and there's a back-to-back. Heck yeah, you're taking off that last game. And I don't care if you're at 64 and a half games and you're going to miss out. It is what it is.
Yep. And to that, all NBA is going to be positionless, but it always should have been probably anyways. At least I actually do think there's a good conversation to have there where you go positionless. You really change the game for casual fans. I think that those positions actually still matter. Whether they do for me who lives, eat, sleeps, and breathes basketball doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But it's about, the audience at large. But I think that, those things are fairly unimportant. But
but again, this is another just stupid consequence of this bad rule change, right?
Exactly.
Okay, we're going to make all NBA teams conditioned on this. Oh, well, we're going to either have the 17th best 5,
right?
Or we're going to make it positionless and we can at least get some of the better players.
You can have the 15 best players being all NBA, and that's a step in the right direction.
Right. Well, and it's kind of ironic, though. The first positions that sort of blended were 5 and 3, 4, and 5, the
right.
big men, right? Because there weren't really enough. There was always 1 or maybe 2 great 5s,
right?
But that was it, And now we're in a situation where we have multiples, in terms of Embiid and Jokic, and
well, this year Embiid and Jokic could go. Embiid, Giannis, and Jokic could go 1, 2, 3 in MVP in any order, and the guy who wins the MVP could wind up on the second team.
Right.
That's insane.
That's
so
crazy.
I think that's a step in the right direction. In-season tournament is a giant money grab.
Uh-huh.
Okay. It's going to be part of the regular season schedule. So the records in these games count. And I guess that's one way to make sure that teams show up with their players. But
even then,
who cares?
Maybe, right? They're trying to generate buzz. They're trying to generate buzz a la March Madness, right? It's a long season, right?
Yeah. I actually, in my opinion, they could have carved out an actual tournament, and I think it could have been better, but you have to give up the 82 game schedule. That's the reality of it. So this is, I think, a better solution than I've seen otherwise if you're going to maintain an 82 game schedule and add an in-season tournament. It adds 1 extra game for 2 teams,
right?
And it's going to be a final played in Las Vegas. So I'm okay with that because it means another trip to Vegas. And then, okay, now this is where things, and again, we haven't seen all the details yet. I'm just going to hammer this home. We haven't seen all the details yet, but this is the stuff that really causes me to sort of, wrinkle my face a little bit when I'm reading about it. Players can invest in NBA and WNBA teams via the NBPA selected private equity firm. Okay. We all know on the surface why that seems weird. Not the WNBA part, because that actually doesn't bother me. It's a different league. The NBA part, if players can invest as a private individual in teams, that's a problem. But it seems here as if it's more of a general investment, almost a fund. And we don't know the details yet, but they are not going to be, it won't be LeBron James buying a 10% stake of the Sacramento Kings, I'm assuming.
Right. It used to be that before they got all sophisticated with the rules, players could have ownership deals. I remember, I think Paul Arizin might have been the first where he got offered a contract and 10% of the Lakers.
That's a good deal.
That would have been an amazing deal, but I don't think he ended up taking that deal. And then they got very tight about all the different kinds of circumvention, right? Down to you cannot own something that has a store in the arena. Just you can't have relatives that are working for a subsidiary of a team. Just all sorts of things to keep it so that the players are being paid by their contracts and nothing but their contracts. Okay, I understand that, and they got it to the point where it was absolutely sterile. Right? It was a clean room. The contract, and that was all. But one of the players' arguments And this was really big back in 2011 when they were having the argument about being an unsustainable league. The players, the union was saying, you're making like $1 billion on your franchise increasing in value. Owners were like, yeah, but we invested that money into that. And players are, well, we helped build that. Still, you don't get to reap the benefits of a stock if you didn't buy the stock to begin with, right? Doesn't matter if it appreciates or not. Doesn't matter that you're a customer of that or work for the store. If you don't own the stock, you don't get the capital gains. And it's the same thing here. So this at least reverses that a little bit, and it lets the players indirectly, right? So this private equity firm is going to control it. They're going to keep the players an arm's length from the transactions. They might not even know what they're actually investing in, for what we know. It might be like a blind trust kind of thing, but the players are able to invest. So again, they're putting the money in, they're putting the capital in the league, and see their success in the league that they're helping to create grow and benefiting from that. So I like that as a compromise to that debate that happened back in 2011.
Medical info coming out in the combine. Medical info for teams, for people that don't know, medical info is incredibly hard to come by.
Yeah.
And it is one of the secrets of the trade for scouting and front office is, are you good at getting medical info that's accurate?
And it's leverage, right? If you don't want to be drafted by some team, I don't want to go to Toronto because it's too cold up there, then I'm not going to send my medicals to Toronto, but I'll send them to every team I do want to be drafted by.
Yeah. I'm only sending them to the Miami Heat, just for the record. I like good weather. And marijuana removed from the drug program, which feels incredibly overdue.
This is the 2020s.
Codified. There we go. So, we don't have to make the jokes anymore. Everybody knows what's happening because everybody knows what's happening. And I think the last thing is players being able to do endorsement deals with gambling companies. This is probably the most controversial thing to come out of this.
Well, and we heard not directly with gambling either. So again, it sounds like they're trying to keep them at arm's length.
Right. I'm thinking it's more like an influencer sort of situation, but that's a little bit gray, in my opinion. I think that's one I definitely need to see more info on.
It's a door that's been open. Gambling companies have been partners of the league now for close to a decade. So again, we want to keep this on the up and up, but in theory, there are ways to be able to keep it on the up and up, but still allow positive kinds of things to happen.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a pretty extensive rundown of what we know so far. Obviously, we'll update this and maybe do another episode when we get a one sheet. I know you're going to be on Dunked On with Nate Duncan sometime next week to explore this
Once
further.
we have a term sheet, I'm going to hop on with Nate and we'll break it down in detail.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like only Nate can.
Like only Nate and Larry Coon can. And don't forget, sportsbusinessclassroom.com. Registration's open July 9th to the 15th at Las Vegas Summer League. Sportsbusinessclassroom.com for more information. And the promo code, Larry.
So, since you were here for this special edition podcast, we're going to have a special edition podcast promo code. If you use the promo code new CBA, I'm going to give you $300 off because I know you were here. I know you listened to this. I want you in Sports Business Classroom.
There you go. So sportsbusinessclassroom.com. Use the promo code new CBA. Get $300 off registration. July 9th to 15th. Coming up fast, Larry.
It is. We're already a good chunk full. We're more than halfway full right now. So, and we're early in our process. We just closed early bird. I'll let you in an inside secret. We haven't spent a dime in advertising. We will start, but this was all word of mouth. This is people who know us, people on our early interest list, people who understand what an opportunity this is and they want in. So again, this is a program that changes people's lives. If you want more information on it, we organize it like a college. You're gonna pick your major, and our majors are the league salary cap, scouting, video, and analytics, which you run, and also media and broadcast, which Bo Estes runs. And we have the great Howard Beck this year We haven't announced him yet, but apparently I just did.
Yeah.
Who's going to be a big part of the program this year. You're going to get the best of everything in terms of focusing on one of those three, getting the big breadth of everything from league operations to being out there in summer league working. We're in the arena. Which means the entire league is right outside our back door of our classroom. There's no other situation in sports like that where an entire league is in one place for an extended length of time in a relaxed environment, right? Okay, the entire league, everybody's got somebody at All-Star or Finals. Try talking to them. You're not going to do it.
Yeah, good luck.
Not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, look, Summer League has become like a second home for me. And I mean, I love going there. And this is the time of year where my phone's ringing off the hook. People ask me how they're going to get into Sports Business Classroom. I tell them the same thing. Go to sportsbusinessclassroom.com. Use the promo code NEWCBA. Sign up now. For Larry Coon, I'm Dave DuFour. This has been the Sports Business Classroom podcast, talking about the new CBA. See you guys in Vegas.